More than the legend will survive. On this episode of The Devil's Workshop, it's the Hughes Brothers' From Hell. Hello and welcome to the Devil's Workshop podcast. I am your host, Nick Oliver.
And I'm your host, Katy Oliver.
And we have a challenging movie this week, I think.
Yes, we do. My suggestion, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and we almost didn't cover it.
But then we ran out of time.
Yeah, so this is going to be a tricky movie to talk about. I think it will be, for me, best compared to Hannibal. Both in its subject matter, because obviously we're dealing with serial killers, depraved, famous serial killers, so it's naturally a comparison point for that reason. But additionally, Hannibal to me was irreparable, which we made an attempt to repair it, but the premise was fundamentally flawed.
Fruit of the poison tree.
Yeah, there's nothing, the very idea, I mean, short of us writing a new movie called Hannibal, which is always the thing I resist. That's not the endeavor here. The endeavor is taking an existing draft and making it better, and changing it sometimes quite a lot at least, but not from the ground up. It's not throw everything out, start a new script called Hannibal. That's what that movie would have required to make it functional, I think, fully. This is not, to me, profoundly broken in the same way. So that's not a perfect comparison to me. What I do think is important to point out, and you have quite a lot of experience with the source material, the graphic novel From Hell, as written by Alan Moore and illustrated by Eddie Campbell. I've not read that, but that source material is, in your description to me, is really very literary.
Yes.
And this is not that.
No.
And which is fine, I mean, but there's a lot of vestigial elements. So I should be clear about this. So I did look into this a little bit, and I found actually that the ideas that are presented in this movie, the specific, the involvement of, I almost said the Rosicrucians, not the Rosicrucians,
the
Freemasons. The involvement of the Freemasons, the idea that the monarchs covered up the birth of a bastard child, an heir to the throne through illegitimate marriage, all of this stuff. This is not an idea from the work From Hell. From Hell took that idea from a popular British book called Jack the Ripper, The Final Solution. And From Hell takes that and runs with it, right?
And expands on it significantly.
Yeah. And it's quite dense and quite long. Whereas this is long to an extent in movie terms, 2 hours.
But it's not 528 pages of a comic long, you know? Like I think if someone were to make a successful adaptation of the comic From Hell, it would have to be a miniseries or like a season of television or something.
Right. Considerably longer.
It's so elaborate.
Yeah.
And so densely researched. And because I have read the source material, or the comic at least, and you haven't, I'm going to try and keep my references to the comic to a minimum, though there are a couple of interesting things that might be worth pointing out, just like trivia type stuff.
Well, and in our case, or in my case at least, I try to avoid looking at the source material. Like I try not to. In this case, I did look at it a little. A little. I'm not sure that in summary you really could get a meaningful understanding of the source material anyway. So I'm not sure that what I did is necessarily that productive, but or that would give me very much depth, I guess is what I mean by that.
Sure.
So anyway, this movie is at such a remove from the source material that, again, I have not read the thing that's From Hell took its idea from either, so I can only speak but to an extent. But this seems like it's as much, like you could perhaps more faithfully refer to it as an adaptation of Jack the Ripper, The Final Solution.
Sure.
It seems like it's shedding so much of what makes From Hell, the graphic novel, the thing that it is.
Yes.
And instead keeps some very basic plot points, which reduces it to the thing that From Hell sort of took its the idea that kickstarted the endeavor.
Almost the thesis, or not even the thesis, but like the sort of just the broad suggestion.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth saying, and this is something that we'll inevitably come back to, I'm sure, in our critique, but like the movie like necessitates having read the comic to understand really what is happening in it, but it's such a dumbing down of the comic and like all the subject matter that precedes the comic that it's like it's a failure right out the gate. Like the gate opens and it falls on its face. Which is it makes it, to me, an interesting piece of material to talk about, because and we've talked in a really limited way about adaptation, the problems of adaptation, and how like movies have to work to bring a text to life in the way that film allows, so maybe that's something we'll get into, maybe not. And like I don't know. I just think this is such a like cursed property in some ways.
Yeah. I like the idea of it well enough, I suppose. I mean, it's a Jack the Ripper. It's an interesting sort of thing to undertake because, Jack the Ripper, well, I mean, he's sort of a persona, but I mean, this is a real guy, and in a sense, and the people he killed were certainly real people. So I mean, you can argue about, like, is this an appropriate thing to play around with, given that Hannibal Lecter is not a real guy, right?
Right.
So
right.
Is it okay to deal with him and not this? I
like
know.
how much is it appropriate to invoke this monster of human history? And like, Rippermania is a thing that has, kind of lulled and swelled at various points throughout history. I mean, certainly, in London as the killings were taking place, but I feel like, the Western world has just been variously fascinated by this case because it remains an unsolved mystery. And, usually we start out the podcast talking about like what is our relationship to the movie that we're here to talk about, but maybe it would also be worth talking about like what is your relationship to the Ripper case also.
I effectively have none. It's never been a particular fascination of mine. I mean, I can see why it would be, any true crime thing. I mean, that's sort of that feels like a very much more modern term than feels appropriate
like
to
cold
use
cases,
to a very old thing,
mysteries.
But it's fundamentally the idea, I guess, is the same. So,
yeah.
But I can see why somebody would get into it. I never have.
But you've never seen the movie before now,
right?
And
I've never seen this movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like Alan Moore a lot.
Yeah.
I don't go I don't go very far in his work. I've read Watchmen. I've read a lot of the stuff that people have. So I'm not a huge fan or something. But he's an interesting person. He's one of those guys who. Clips of him speaking will circulate through YouTube every so often. I think he's wound up on my algorithm. And he's just always interesting to listen to. He's just a compelling speaker, which, of course, you see him. He's strange looking and English and
intense.
He's very intense. Has that low class way of speaking, but he's obviously so smart. So he's compelling. He's like naturally magnetic to listen to. So I like him a lot. I'm sure he would probably appreciate if I liked his work more, or if I was more familiar with his work, rather. I'm sure he wants those residuals, but I doubt he gets very much if I watch like some BBC interview with him.
Sure.
Nevertheless,
hey,
Alan Moore.
Maybe he got a buck for you watching From Hell.
Maybe.
I hope so.
Maybe.
My relationship is probably the more substantial of the two of us, just to this property. Like, I also like the work of Alan Moore, though I want to say From Hell is the only comic of his that I've actually finished reading all the way through. And I mean, it was a real undertaking because it's quite long and comes with like chapter by chapter appendices they go into painstaking detail about the way the comic was made and the research that went into his version of events. But yeah, I likewise find him very interesting and a compelling author and storyteller. I have been intermittently fascinated with the Ripper killings throughout my life. You know, I'm interested in the Victorian period. I'm interested in just the way London was kind of like this pot waiting to boil over around the time of the murders. And, you know, I've like looked into the killings over different points in my life. But I watched the movie several years ago, don't know exactly when now, let's say 2022, 23, somewhere in there, and was inspired to read the comic because of that, you know, because I was like, oh gosh, this movie is not very good, but it's gesturing at so many different things that it makes me want to read the source material.
Sure.
You can see, like, it's like the movie feels like the tip of the iceberg. And that kind of started like a serious Rippermania of my own. And like a lot of my scholarly work deals with like the body and the way bad things happen to it and the way sort of body and text merge on the page. And so I'm interested in representations, adaptations, and so on of bodies being destroyed, basically. So it holds a kind of allure for me, even as I am truly horrified by what happened to the victims. It's, you know, it's awful stuff, but I've wanted to talk about this movie for a long time. So I'm glad that we're getting the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and it's going to be a difficult movie to critique using our toolbox because I think this is a movie that could stand to be edited differently. And I think the audio mixing is a real problem for it. I mean, I have those sorts of gripes that I'm not mentioning them now, and I'll mention them again, but I will not linger on them at all because what am I supposed to do about that?
Right.
Here, right?
You're in the writer's room.
Yeah. So, which is why we really considered not dealing with this movie, because I think its problems... I mean, there are problems here that I think we will talk about, that we will address, that are real, but I think many of its issues are in that world where...
Yeah, it's got... The problems it has are quite multivalent,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
This is a troubled movie, and it's deeply imperfect, and I think it does a lot to... to make the subject matter less interesting than it actually is. But, you know, occasionally you can see like the far off silhouette of the comic kind of like in relief and be like, oh wait, there's something underneath the silliness of this movie.
There are things of interest there. And I will say, from my part, when we watched this, I was like, I think I may hate this movie, though there is a bright spot in it. So that was my initial impression. And having gone through to write the revision, I definitely don't hate it. I like it a lot more.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah, but you don't hate it.
No, I don't hate it. Yeah, I don't like it. So but that is still a substantial change in opinion, as mild as that does seem.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that does feel like that warrants mentioning.
Yeah.
Before we get into the workshop, at least.
And for my part, I don't hate it either. I kind of approach this movie with like a sigh, just because I think it could have been better. But as is so often the case with the movies that we discuss, like there are problems that weigh this movie down that like I honestly don't really see a way out of. Like there are things that really hold it back that I think a lot of even very intelligent craftspeople would have difficulty addressing. So I'm looking forward to getting into our conversation.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe I will have. I don't know what you mean by that necessarily, but we'll see if you. Maybe one of us will solve it without knowing.
Maybe so.
You never know.
I hope so.
One bit of interest that I think is warrants mentioning. So we will have some returning actors popping up here and there.
Yeah.
As we had with Anthony Hopkins from Hannibal to the Wolfman. So this is going to be a rare case where we have a returning character, sort of. Aberline, the lead character of this movie, Inspector Aberline.
Frederick Aberline. Yes,
though
named Francis in The Wolfman.
In The Wolfman, yeah. So he was a real-life person, so he was repurposed in The Wolfman, and here is our lead. So, yes, we actually have a returning character on this, which is that I wouldn't have expected would happen, that we'd run into that, but here we are.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, I think, like, the Wolfman, our episode on the Wolfman may come up a little bit as we discuss, because this is yet another sort of Victorian horror, and a Victorian horror of detection as well. And it's, again, like, flailing in an attempt to kind of come to grips with, like, historical violence and, like, the violence of a historical period. It's in, I would say, good company, or it's in, flawed company, I guess, with the Wolfman.
Sure.
But should we get into, like, what's actually working about this film?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
We'll be right back with the workshop. All right, what's working for us?
Okay, I've got a pretty short list, and that's not...
Likewise.
I just think we can kind of speed through it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say, just, because we usually start with performance.
Does it start with an I and end in...
And home. It maybe. Okay, spoiler alert, geez. But yeah, there's only one performance here that, at least in the principal cast, that truly stands out to me.
Yeah.
And that's Ian Holmes.
Yeah. If there's any reason to watch this movie, that's the reason.
It's for him.
Yeah, it's for Ian Holmes.
Watch like a supercut of his scenes or something. He's so good in
that. Would be enough. I wouldn't recommend anybody watch this movie. Oh, I did forget to mention, there is nowhere to watch this, so normally we like to mention where you can stream this, but it's going to be a rental if you want to watch from hell for the time being.
If you're listening to this 3 years in the past, you can watch it on Peacock, I think. But that's just for our time travelers in the audience. I'm pretty sure it was either Peacock or whatever form HBO was in at the time. I don't even remember anymore. I think it was Peacock.
Yeah, Ian Holm. And this is right around the time of Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
So this is Bilbo Baggins, Ian Holm, right
Bilbo's
at that same time.
doing some naughty stuff in this.
Yeah, Bilbo's been a bad little boy. So spoilers. Ian Holm, he plays Dr. Gull, who is
Sir William Gull,
who eventually is revealed to be Jack the Ripper.
Yes, and Gull is also a real-life figure. He was the royal physician, essentially.
And certainly not actually Jack the Ripper. So the possibility of him having done it is pretty much disproven. He was not considered a serious suspect at that time. He was, in the popular consciousness, considered a suspect because of Jack the Ripper, The Final Solution, the book. Mm-hmm. He did not do it.
There are a lot of interesting coincidences that, like, I can see why that book made a decently compelling case for Gull as a suspect, but a lot of it's really just circumstantial. Yeah. And a lot of it's just interesting coincidence.
It's disproven. The book that started all of this is basically proven to be complete bullshit. And a point of interest. So the novel, or that book, was written by a guy who joined a cult.
No shit.
Yeah, the same cult was Rajneesh something. It was a subject focused on in the documentary Wild Wild Country that was big on Netflix a few years ago. I haven't watched it, but yeah, a cult that led some kind of assassination attempt against like local officials in Oregon. Something like that. So not a reliable guy who sort of kicked off this idea, but that's just a point of curiosity, not relevant to us right now. Yeah, that's
intriguing.
So what we're talking about is good old Sir Ian.
Yes, he really elevates this movie. Like, without him, there wouldn't be much to see here.
Yeah. Yeah, he's... well, somebody like that, Ian Holm, that's a class act. I mean, there are a few people who always have that dignity about them.
Yes.
Like, they always are working hard wherever they are. He's one of those guys. And the movie, up to the point that he shows up, you don't spend very much time with him at first, but you do get a passing, like, here he is, 10 or 15 minutes in, and the movie seems a little cheap, a little low rent up to that point. Then he walks in and like, Ian Holm.
That's when I'm in a period drama feeling locks in.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it looks like kind of a costume party.
He injects a lot of life into the whole affair.
Yes. Well, and I think he's just such an elegant performer. You know, like the way he uses his body, I think is quite beautiful. His face has such a subtlety of expression. Mm-hmm. I just really like Ian Holm. I mean, wow, what a controversial thing to say.
Yeah.
But, no surprise here, he's great.
Yeah.
And he is quite frightening in the moments where the film needs him to be frightening.
Both elements of his performance. So he's good when he's the kindly, not mentor figure, but he's helping our inspector solve the case. Mm-hmm. Then it turns out he is, in fact, the suspect. At that point, he changes, right? And a different side is revealed.
And then but there are layers to his evil / his madness as well. Like when you kind of see him sort of descend into his own psyche, like he kind of returns to being the teacher figure that we first come to care about at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting.
There are a lot of dimensions to the performance. The role really asks a lot of him.
And he fucking delivers.
He nails it. Yeah, he's really great.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, he's so good. Okay, maybe this is a strange thing to say. I wonder if you'll agree with me. I think that a lot of the background performers are also really good. Like, they feel like they know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They feel like they understand the movie that they're in. It's just the sort of the cast, like the top billed cast aside from Ian Holm, who are not really bringing it for me.
Yeah, so that's I don't know the work of the directors. I think I have seen, I'm looking them up right now. I should have prepared for this, actually.
I looked and then I forgot promptly.
So they did a lot of Chicago-based crime dramas.
Okay.
That's their history. A lot of inner city stuff. Mm-hmm. That's sort of their focus at the time. But I think they have a Hollywood, like an American thing that they're bringing with them.
Much too American.
Yes.
Much too American.
Yes. So they come in like, okay, we're going to cast these people. This is what we need to have a successful movie, which is to their discredit, I think.
They did the Book of Eli.
Yeah, I've seen Dead Presidents.
I've seen the Book of Eli.
I've seen the Book of Eli, though I don't remember anything about it. Huh. I haven't seen Menace to Society, which is probably the most critically acclaimed of their movies. I think that's what established them. Dead Presidents is good too, but yeah, a lot of stuff that focuses on the inner city in Chicago, crime, like low level drug deals and things like that. Mm-hmm. That's sort of their
wheelhouse.
Yeah. So they're coming in. I maybe it's not their fault. I mean, I'm not sure that that's the case, but there's a Hollywood quality to this that is to its detriment. And everybody in the background is like, okay, well, we're going to shoot in the UK. It's a lot easier to cast a bunch of English actors. And so everybody, all of those people are like, oh, okay. You know, the Shakespeare people, all the people who've worked with the BBC or whatever, they're all great.
Yeah.
They understand the assignment. Like, they're familiar with the Victorian era. They bring a an authenticity with them. Like,
Yeah.
they understand the English class tensions, when everybody who's American seems not to.
Well, they're coming from a different cultural context. Not that, like, an international cast member cannot kind of transcend those cultural lines and boundaries, but it's not happening here.
Yeah, not here.
And honestly, I'm going to say I don't hate Johnny Depp's performance in this movie. I just don't think he's right for the role.
Hate's a strong term, yeah. I don't hate it.
Like, I don't think it's poorly acted. I think it's just the wrong shape. And Heather Graham, I like as a performer, but she's not, the accent is not doing her any favors.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's that. Like, it really pulls focus, unfortunately. But, the other characters who play the prostitutes, the canonical five, I think are excellent. All the background players are excellent.
Yeah.
So it's weird how much of the cast actually is working. Mm-hmm. It's just that the sort of the pillars are crumbling.
Except for Sir Ian, of course.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of good touches with Ian Holmes' performance. So as Dr. Gull. So for instance, it's about the 45-minute mark. Aberline is in the high society function. He's visiting. I don't think it's the same scene where the Elephant Man is displayed. So maybe it is. I actually can't recall now, but he's entered a high society function, and he greets Dr. Farrell because he wants his consultation as being the best surgeon. Like, I'm trying to solve this case. I need a surgeon to look at this information. Dr. Farrell's
kind of
like,
an expert witness.
Yeah, Dr. Farrell's like, I'm good, right? Yeah. And so Dr. Farrell, the line is something that I don't see how a reputable surgeon could know anything about it. Mm-hmm. And in the background, it's easy to not catch this, because at this point you don't know that Dr. Gull is Jack the Ripper, right? Mm-hmm. So he's in the frame, but he's de-emphasized, right? So Ian Holm, as Dr. Gull, turns around and gives him kind of a shitty look. He's insulted, right? Because there's two elements of it. For one thing, he's lying, right? Farrell does know about it.
Of course.
Yeah, he knows that Dr. Gull is actually the one who's going around and killing them. So he is a reputable surgeon who does know quite a lot about it, actually. So there's that element to it, that Gull is recognizing a lie that's happening. The second
and also
is
social snobbery.
Right, sure, but he's also recognizing he's being insulted.
Yeah.
And saying, a reputable surgeon wouldn't know.
Sure.
Like, a reputable surgeon would never do a thing like that. So, he knows that this surgeon has done it, so he's basically insulting him. Or he takes offense at it, which is interesting. It's subtle, right?
Yeah.
You do catch it. There are little things like that in his performance, just as an example. So that's really strong. I will say also, related not to the performance, but to the choices that are made. So you and I, again, we would consider not doing this movie. Mm-hmm. So we did talk about it some off mic when we initially watched the movie, because we were debating as to whether or not we were even going to do it. Ultimately to decide, obviously, to do it. But I was initially, as I told you, I was initially put off by the fact that Dr. Gull, again played by Ian Holm, gives Aberline so much information, because Aberline doesn't have very much to work with otherwise, right? I mean, he does need the information that Dr. Gull gives him to eventually solve the case, which is that Dr. Gull is, in fact, Jack the Ripper. But I've come around on that, actually. I do think it fits for me. It feels like it's an extension of what we do know about Jack the Ripper, with him taunting the police or the public via letter to the media. Mm-hmm. He can't help but want for people to know. So it's like it's a compulsion. He can't help. Aberline doesn't approach Dr. Gull. Dr. Gull approaches Aberline.
Right.
Like, he can't help himself.
Yeah.
Partially, this made me thinking about it, or this made me think about it, that when Farrell is insulting the work, right, Aberline is like, no, I need to tell you, I need to correct the record, and I need you to know that these works are the works of an intelligent man, of an educated man, the works of a genius, perhaps. Mm-hmm. and he ultimately can't stand to have his work attributed to others. Later on, Aberline thinks that like his suspect is the prince, which he's not. Of course, the Ripper,
and the prince would be the perfect scapegoat because there's probably just a blanket expectation that the crown is going to suppress that if that's ultimately true. So Gull could be like, "Oh yeah, wow, that's crazy,"
right?
And like nothing would come of it.
Yeah, but Gull can't help but tell him otherwise.
Help it. Yeah,
he can't have his works. He needs the attribution.
Yeah, well, and that something about that feels like appropriately Freudian, which is, also appropriate for this time period. It's like the return of the repressed, like the thing that you most desperately try to hide or push down beneath the surface will only more insistently wriggle its way free. Like a surgeon, like cutting open a body and taking a tumor out or something. Like it feels... To me, it feels ideologically consistent.
Yeah.
Which is
it feels
fun.
Serial killer. It feels like I don't pretend to know anything about serial killers really, but in terms of what we popularly understand of serial killers, their
mythos.
compulsions as seen in fiction, right? It feels consistent with that. And of course, it's Jack the Ripper, right? He's the serial killer. He's the one who set the mold in which all the others follow, more or less.
Right.
So it feels fair, especially here. So
no, I'm into it. And I mean, in some ways, thankfully, because there is so much, there's a preponderance of evidence in some ways in the Ripper case, but so much of it is like, is this legitimate evidence? Is this fabricated? Like for instance, the Dear Boss and the From Hell letters that are kind of winked at in the movie, like, are they written by the Ripper, or were they fabricated by newspaper journalists to bring attention to the story? So like you can really play with this mythos quite a bit, and tell a cogent story out of the pieces, while also I think, like, as the movie kind of does, like showing like how far we had to come in things like forensic science and policing, like the way evidence got tampered with or destroyed or hidden or suppressed, like that's all. I mean, I don't know. To me, it just spotlights such an interesting moment in the history of serial killers, as you say, and crime and justice.
Yeah, the movie, certainly historically, there's a lot of that.
Well, and again, the comic does it better, but sure. I promise I won't be annoying about it.
Solving the murder here relies pretty much exclusively on motive. Yeah, there's not so much like, the knife, this physical evidence. There's not so much of that.
And I suppose means like, the killer had to be educated, but
that's true.
Right. But definitely, this is not like a forensics lab mystery by any stretch of the imagination.
But there are details that I think are warrant mentioning.
Yeah,
the movie I think does handle pretty well. Though, like the best kinds of things here, that you do only sort of observe them in retrospect. So, for instance, the prince, who is, as previously mentioned, was a suspect at one time, he is seen with his hands shaking when he's signing a check, right? Though it is later pointed out by Dr. Gull that he couldn't have committed the crime because of his unsteady hands due to his syphilis, which syphilis is initially seen as a possible motivation. He was crazed due to his syphilis, so he's going to do something wild like be Jack the Ripper. So at the time that his hands are shaking, you attribute it to his disturbed state because he's just seen the Elephant Man. And the audience is freaked. Like everybody in the collected group is pretty disturbed, including Dr. Gull, it seems, watching that. He was like, whoa, that's pretty wild. So you just attribute it to his disturbed state. The camera pans up from his hands to his eyes, and he's freaked out for sure. So his expression reinforces that. It's not just speculative on our part as the audience. So he's visibly disturbed, but hidden amidst that detail. So you notice the shaking hands. What you're less likely to notice is that he's left-handed.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And the killer has to be right-handed.
The killer
because
has
of the
to be
direction of
right-handed,
the cut.
which Dr. Gull tells you in the following scene that the
Right.
killer has to be right-handed.
Yeah.
So it sort of throws this to you, and it gives you one like major point of evidence, but hides another one there.
Yeah, well, and that also, I think, pairs nicely with the detail that, like, when we see the killer presumably eating the half of the liver that he took from one of his victims, or the kidney, I can't remember which one. He's sitting at a table surrounded by portraits of people with serious medical deformities, suggesting he's totally comfortable, seeing people with, again, these very visible medical issues. So, yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of nice stuff that's baked in that's easily missed.
Yeah,
I think
there's enough there if you're an attentive enough viewer, and I'm decent at this, but I'm not great at it. But so again, retrospect is where I'm spotting this stuff. But as another instance is Mr. Kidney. He's a suspect at one time, so he's the chief enforcer for the I forgot
the special branch.
Special branch, thank you. So. He has a carriage with the mechanical steps that flip down. So those steps, or I guess they're not mechanical, but yeah, the steps flip down, right?
Yeah.
So Jack the Ripper's carriage is seen with the same thing, except Jack the Ripper's are ornamented. So they have like stupid devil horns coming off of them or whatever. So Kidney's carriage has that. And they come down with the same, they have a very
Slice
loud,
sound.
chunky sort of like, it's a startling sound when they come down, like bad shit's about to happen. His come down to the same thing, but his don't have the stupid devil horns.
Right.
He can't possibly be the killer. We've seen that his carriage appears differently. So there's enough detail. You hear that crazy sound in the editing, like, oh, is he the killer? But if you pay attention, no, they're shot in such a way. Like, it's slightly obscure, but it's there. So he doesn't have the devil horns. He can't be the killer. So there's enough of detail like that. It's there for you. If you're that kind of viewer, then there's something to be seen and caught by you.
Yeah, I mean, this movie is so interesting because I think if you weren't paying close attention, it might fall into that category of the sort of careless, thoughtless bad movie, but it's not that.
Yeah.
It's just got some very front-facing problems. I think the Hollywoodification that you bring up with like the casting of the leads, for instance, that's very visible, and it takes a lot of your attention, but the movie, like, behind the scenes is smarter than it lets on.
Yeah.
It's just not smart enough.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. I wanted to say something that I was thinking about a lot was like, and this is something that I recall from the comic as well, but the whole movie feels suffused with a kind of like a sense of just dreadful inevitability. Like you are watching the women, the prostitutes, the victims of Jack the Ripper, kind of scurry helplessly towards the end of their lives. And I think the comic does a more thorough job of showing like the conditions that force them into lives of prostitution, and also the ways that they are harmed by others, but also are self-defeating occasionally. Like, they'll earn a little money and then they go to drink at the 10 Bells to escape from just the misery of their circumstances, but then they don't have money to buy lodgings or whatever. It's like things like that. There's a real sense of like social determinism or a sort of Victorian naturalism that arises from the way that their lives are staged. And I think at times it's very gripping and it's moving and affecting. And I wish it had hewed more towards being like an ensemble piece that really considered the lives of all the players rather than trying to make it a more traditional detective story.
Sure.
Because that sense of like London is like it's like a beast that just swallows people up. Like, I think the movie's at its best when it's really showing how hard it is to be poor in the 19th century. Yeah. Or just the incredible class disparities between the characters.
Yeah, I like the movie a lot when it is dealing with class. I don't like it. Like, it occasionally goes too far. Mostly Heather Graham, Mary Kelly.
Yeah.
Mary Kelly's relationship to Aberline, I think, is that's when it's at its weakest when it talks about class. But there are moments there too, because she has a lot of dialogue, like, "Oh, England doesn't have whores; it just has women." Yeah, like that kind of stuff gets a little too when they're talking about it. It doesn't work.
It's too on the nose.
Yeah, but there's some interesting. I think it adds a lot of texture at times. So when it's speaking directly about it, I think it's at its weakest. But a really strong example, and again, I will actually refer to Aberline and Mary Kelly. So they go to the art gallery, and they see the portrait of the Queen, Victoria, and then they see the portrait of
Prince
the Prince.
Albert.
Right. Well, that to me rings truer about class than anything that anybody says in this movie. That a peasant might be ruled by the monarchy, sort of. I mean, it's still, you have the English government is more complicated than that, but still, you're sort of ruled by the monarchy, right? These are important people in your lives, and the prince, and so the heir to the throne, right? Again, part of that family. That you don't even know what that person looks like. Like, that's interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like, that. So when she goes in, and that's when the realization happens, like, oh, I know who this person is. Oh, shit, that's the Prince of... I had no idea that's the Prince of England, right?
Yeah.
That somebody might not know that. They might have no idea. They go their whole lives, and these people are such a huge figures to them, and they don't even know what they look like.
Yeah, I mean, it really illustrates that they live in profoundly different worlds.
Yeah.
And yet, London forces them all together into this highly stratified society.
Yeah, and of course, they're the ways in which people can move through classed spaces or not. So the prince actually is able to sort of enter her world, though
but
his world sort of wrenches him back out of it, of course.
Yeah.
But without anyone in her world recognizing that, of course. Meanwhile, she can't so much enter his world. When they go to the art gallery, of course, that's a friction-filled moment. People are scandalized just to see her there in her state of dress. Furthermore, you have people like Aberline, who are occupying a somewhat newer middle, relatively speaking. I mean, the middle class is still rising in a way. Yeah, it's still a burgeoning middle class here. So he can walk between both worlds, but doesn't seem to belong to any of them in particular. He's a little bit placeless himself.
Yeah, and not merely the fact of his being middle class, but also the specifics of his profession bar him from certain echelons of society, because he interfaces too much with the more quote-unquote grotesque world of the poor. And so the sort of the scent of ill repute clings to him in a way that makes it hard for him to penetrate, into the world of the aristocracy.
Yeah, he's sort of rejected everywhere, because when he goes to the prostitutes and he's like, "Hey, I'm the inspector. I'm here to help." And they're like, get out of here. Yeah, we don't deal with your kind. Yeah, whatever.
And like, what can the law actually do to help us?
Right.
You jail the gang members and they're back on the streets in a week or two, or like the ones who slip away make our lives even worse. So, yeah, it's and
of course, at the high society function, Dr. Gull is the one who says, "You don't belong here, do you?"
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
pretty direct.
Yeah. Oh, like, again, the class stuff is really interesting. This is such a fascinating period in history. I mean, that's like, to me, that's a big part of that quotation. Like, they will say that I have given birth to the 20th century. It's just such an intriguing cross section of like all the social tensions of the time, plus other stuff too. But I'm glad that you enjoyed that, because I think it's cool.
Well, otherwise, I have nothing else to contribute on the positive side. What about you?
I'll just say one other thing, that in a lot of ways, this movie feels like a precursor to, say, The Wolfman from 2010. I do think there are some nice touches of atmosphere here. You know, London looks filthy and disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the sets all look like if you touched anything with an open wound, you would get contaminated and you would get tetanus and die. And like, you know, that works for me a lot of the time. Sometimes I think it's sensationalist, or it kind of veers into sensational territory, but London really does feel suitably oppressive. And I think, like, one thing that the comic does is really makes a lot of, like, how bizarre certain instances of London architecture are, and how there's almost a sense of, like, architectural horror to the whole thing. And like it's more complicated in the comic, but I do think the movie occasionally identifies some of the buildings from the comic and shows them and makes them look very grotesque. Like, you know, the city feels like it's just a big mouthful of teeth that's ready to kind of chomp people up. So, you know, I like those things, but I'm very susceptible to the way things look in a movie.
Okay.
So,
well,
yeah.
Let's pivot to what's not working.
What's not working, baby?
Well, again, I'll go ahead. I've already alluded to this, so I'll sort of underscore it and then toss it out because it's outside of our scope for the most part. But this movie's really hard to follow. It's very confusing. To such an extent, that's part of why I liked it better on like a close rewatch, because I was trying to figure out, of course, at that point, you're like, okay, I get it now. I'm paying very close attention to the story. So that's helpful. But yeah, there's muttering. There's a ton of muttering. The accents are questionable, at least those of the Americans who are trying to put them on. The sound editing, the scene editing. There's withholding of information, which is curious sometimes. So introducing elements without naming them. So I mean the Freemasons, for instance. The first time you see the Freemasons, nobody speaks aloud the word Freemason. So if you don't know what the hell this movie is, so I think immediately prior to that, you have someone's drawing a pentacle, right? Which, if inverted, is the symbol of the devil. And you have a movie called From Hell. So immediately you see that, like, are these people worshiping the devil or something? What is this about to be? You know,
right.
Which nobody says the word aloud the word Freemason, which is that if we're going to introduce that element, walk us through that. We're entering a world that's historical, that's unfamiliar to us. So, like, give us these details. This is a strangely challenging movie to keep up with. It's confusing.
So, listener, if you haven't seen this one before, this is not a, like, flipping through cable on a Saturday afternoon and watching 2/3 of the movie. You watch this with your fucking opera glasses on. You will not know what's going on if
watch
you
it
don't.
with subtitles.
You sure? Yeah.
Preferably, which we did not.
Preferably watch it after having read the comic, but, like, I don't know why you would really want to. Just read the comic, but, like, yeah, this is a tough one. It was tough for me revisiting this after, because it had been a couple of years since I had read the source material, and I was like, how does this all fit together? And, like, I've read it, I've seen it, you know? This is, it's dense, but also poorly explained.
Yeah, which is too bad, because if you fail in that way, so much of what it comes after doesn't matter. Like, there's some fundamental problems here that really, really hold us back. So,
yeah,
what are you gonna do?
Well, and, like, there's the problem of, like, what do you know versus what don't you know, because you will have a very different experience of this film depending on, like, okay, are you from the UK, for one thing?
Sure.
Like, there's a lot that you probably would have learned about in a history class or something that might, like, take a lot of the air out of some of the twists. Do you know anything about, say, the Cleveland Street scandal? Do you know anything about the Ripper murders already coming to the table? You know, like, because if you know too much, then a lot of the movie's going to fall flat for you. But if you don't know enough, you won't know what the heck is going on. So I don't know what the perfect mix of knowledge is for this. Like,
I think anybody who's dealing with a historical movie has to wrestle with that.
Sure, that's true.
And I'm not sure that there's one answer, but this movie doesn't get it right.
No,
I'll say that.
No, it doesn't. Because I think it just can't decide which perspective it wants to commit to. Like, is this a movie for people who don't know much, or is it for people who are, armchair experts?
Yeah.
And like, there's not a clear answer.
Right.
Another problem that I think the movie has, or rather, like, I think the movie is in a difficult position because it's pretty bloodless despite the subject matter. Like, it really shies away from showing a lot of the violence, but it wants to be more grotesque than it's really allowed to be. But they kind of can't turn this movie into like the blood-soaked celluloid sensation that it craves to be, out of deference to the real victims of the real tragedy. So it's kind of caught in this Ouroboros of like, it feels sometimes like it lacks teeth, so it chases after that sense of bite and urgency, but it can't do it in the traditional avenues of a horror movie by like showing horrible things happening to the victims' bodies, because it does attempt to show them some kind of humanization and respect. So it's like, I don't know what they were supposed to do. That's why at the beginning of the episode I called it kind of a cursed property. But like, it also fails as a story about the victims because it can't afford to spend that much time with them because the plot is so arcane and elaborate. So I'm like, ugh, yeah, that's tough. That's a tough one. I don't know how they could have really done justice to the real events unless, again, they chose not to make this a movie, but instead like, a mini series or something.
Sure.
So in some ways I'm sympathetic to the movie. It's just that it messes up constantly.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I think ramping up the violence a little bit wouldn't have hurt it personally. But I mean, this is it's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, the historical, the fact that these people are real people, right? Yeah, there's perhaps some sensitivity there. At the same time, this ground is so trodden already.
Sure.
I mean, does it matter anymore? I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, that's like such an irresolvable question.
Yeah. I mean, you are making an entertainment product for somebody to pay money to go see at the movies, and then they go to Sbarro's after that. You know what I mean?
Oh, at the mall?
At the mall.
In 2001?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and then you go into Icing by Claire's and you're buying some new earrings. Mm-hmm. I'm just kidding. But yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean,
I'm right.
It's a commercial product
Yeah.
for the purpose of entertainment. This isn't like, a dramatization of real events to be like, if you know anything, please call the foundation. This is not helping anyone.
Yeah. I mean, it's still, but it's a commercial product, but it's an art product too. These things, these matter. I mean, I tend to fall more on the side of show the violence personally. Like,
sure.
I'm not unsympathetic. Maybe I am.
I think you could thread the needle of, humanizing the victims, exploring the difficulties of their lives and the conditions that made London ripe for a mass bloodshed event like this,
mm-hmm.
and still like be fairly frank about what happened to them.
Sure.
But I think this is sort of beyond what the movie is able to do in its current form.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we have alluded to this already, but Johnny Depp and Heather Graham.
Yeah.
So Johnny Depp, you are more mild on him than I am, I think, but I don't care for his performance really. I think my main issue, so obviously his accent, not so great. I think most people would agree with that.
Yeah.
I can kind of forgive shit like that to a degree, if I'm being frank.
It's not outrageously bad.
Yeah, I can I'm not an accent snob. I'm not one of those people. So that's not my main issue. My main issue, frankly, is that he's just a little more difficult to understand than he ought to be.
Sure.
So that's my obstacle there. But more than that, with the performance, he's pretty passive. He's pretty sleepy. But he has no authority about him. So he's supposed to be this, not the chief of police or anything, but he's high ranking as far as investigators are concerned. I have no idea what their structure was in any kind of a formal way, so I'm not especially equipped to speak to that. But he carries no authority whatsoever. It's part of his job to tell people what to do. You don't accept him as credible in that. You don't accept him as being somebody who has seen horrible violence. You don't accept him as being somebody who can peer into the dark soul of the human race or whatever. It's just not there. He's soft and foppish.
He's a dandy.
Yeah, he's frail looking and passive. It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, he doesn't
all.
feel particularly invested in the proceedings.
He doesn't feel like he's part of this world either.
No.
He doesn't seem like he has the crassness to move between the worlds that he has to as part of the classes. So it doesn't feel like it feels like dropping he looks perfumed. It just doesn't. It's not right. He doesn't. But he's too crass to go into the high society place. But in a way that doesn't feel intentional. It's just not. It's just not a good fit.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
I also, and this is not the fault of the performance, but I really hate the element of his visions.
That's the other element.
It's such total naked Deus Ex Machina.
Yes and no, because it doesn't do anything. He doesn't solve any problem.
The only thing that it does is it delivers crucial information about the Freemasons to him, or it nudges him towards the next clue.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So that was a more irritating part of the revision for me when I realized that was how he solved that.
Yeah.
That was the stupid the Freemasons thing came in. So he has psychic visions. Right, that are triggered by his opium use. Mm-hmm. Okay, everything about Aberline sucks in this movie. Okay, so I will try and remember all of them, but I don't like the performance. I don't like the way he carries himself. That's all bad. The look is wrong. Everything about Johnny Depp in this role to me is wrong.
Yeah.
His psychic powers are wrong, especially because they don't help him solve the crime at all, except with one exception, which is that he somehow through a vague vision, and I watched this vision closely, and I'm not sure I'm following it, but from a vision he has, it makes him check out a reference book about the Freemasons, where he reads about some of their symbols, which align with those that he finds at the crime scene, which makes him go to Dr. Gull. So he has that one vision, but otherwise they don't really help solve the plot, and even when it does actually affect the plot, it's not in a way that's confused, that is clear to the audience what's happening. It seems like they were looking for, like they wrote themselves into a corner and get out of it. They're looking for a solution, right? So it felt like a cheat. So that, I don't like his romance.
No.
With Heather Graham at all.
No.
I don't like his opium addiction at all. I don't think that adds anything to the character. Because the opium addiction feels like, that triggers his psychic visions. So he gets high on opium and has those visions. So that it's related to an element of the plot that I don't like. It's or related to an element of the character I don't like, rather. It also is something that he attributes to, or it's implied, that he's hooked on opium because he had a wife who died in childbirth, and it's his way of getting over her, right? Which makes him sympathetic to Mary Kelly, who falls in love with him. But I don't want that element of the story to be there at all. I don't need him to be sympathetic in that way. So everything to do with the opium, I think, does a disservice to the character. Oh, also it relates to Dr. Gull, because Dr. Gull meets him and deduces that Aberline is an opium addict and gives him treatment for it. Here's this tonic, here's this pill, it'll help you out, and so you can get off the opium, which makes us treat him, or think of him as being more kindly, which makes us, in theory, not suspect him to be Jack the Ripper. But that solving problem we don't have, because already Dr. Gall reads as being sympathetic and kind, in part because he's played by Ian Holm, right? So that's solving a problem that the movie doesn't have.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think virtually everything about Aberline for me fails.
The only thing that I like about the romance is that it's like another instance of these sort of uncomfortable collisions between different social classes, but I do think you could achieve the same effect in a smarter way in about a million other directions. So yeah, I totally agree. It just doesn't work. I wanted him to be more of a figurehead for the middle class than he really is here. Like doing his best to sort of climb the rungs of society and escape from the kind of everyday devastation that he witnesses through his work, but still bumping up against that ceiling of like, you will never be accepted in the way that, say, like a Sir Charles Warren, his aristocratic supervisor, is part of that world.
The class commentary in this movie is at its least successful with the middle class. Yeah,
which is a shame, because I think in some ways, it's a really important element.
Yeah.
Well,
it's the burgeoning class, right? So it's kind of the most interesting one in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's the class that's
You've always had peasants. You've always had the ultra-wealthy or the aristocrats. So what are these new upstarts? What's their deal?
That's one of the children of the 20th century, Like, that's one of the things that's being born as we speak in the Victorian period. So, it just needed to nail certain parts of his character, and it just pretty much falls flat. Which is a shame. It's a shame.
Yeah.
I also think, like, if you're gonna give him visions, if you're gonna do it, if you feel like you have to, which you really don't, you really, really don't, like, why not go all out with them? Like, remember when we were talking about the Wolfman, and there's that sort of prolonged asylum dream sequence, or the fever dream?
That really works.
That really works. That's awesome. And here, it's like they just don't indulge enough, Like, if you're going to sort of peel back the scab of the tormented psyche, then, like, fucking have at it.
Yeah, that's an opportunity for creativity.
But
if you're
going
to have psychic visions. Instead, they're close enough to what happens, right? So they're just visions, and you just put a grain filter over them and change the color grading, and then there's your psychic vision,
speed
right?
It up
but
by
it's just
1.5.
Yeah, but it's just a shot like any other footage, right?
Yeah.
So the world behaves in the way that the world behaves. That's an opportunity for people to the world to operate in fantastic ways.
Yeah,
you could. That's that's a squandered opportunity.
The only one of his visions that I actually like is just, I think it's maybe the first one, or one of the first ones, where he sees a vision of Polly Nichols being killed, and then goes to the morgue, expects to see her, but it's Martha Tabram instead.
Right.
Because he's like, oh, wait, that's weird. Like, I'm never wrong. So what's this all about? Like, marking officially the beginning of the killings. I liked that moment, but again, it's not enough to justify the whole thing.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about that, because what they were trying to wrestle with is that killing, the first one we see in the movie, people debate whether or not Jack the Ripper did it.
Right.
So in the movie, it's not cleanly attributed to Jack the Ripper. It could be.
It's kind of left ambiguous.
Yeah, the knife is clearly Jack the Ripper's knife if you're looking for it closely, but the method is not the same. Like, there are complicating factors. Like, I think you could interpret it the other way around, reasonably, but it's muddy in a way. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not great.
Yeah, the movie's not really willing to come down hard on its theory.
Well, and the problem with it is that the movie's so confusing up to the point anyway.
Yeah.
Like, it's confused. Like, the movie is attributing lacking clarity on who killed who. So you have separate murders going on. I mean, real life is like that. So, and I kind of appreciate, like, we're trying to represent real life's lack of clarity. Like, that's fine, or that's theoretically fine, but everything else is so confusing already that you get into it. What has happened? It's just not.
Yeah.
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 Anyway.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else, like any big stuff that I wanted to talk about.
I have two things. If there's, do you?
Oh, can I say a piece of trivia from the comic?
Sure.
You really should read it just because it's very interesting, but like I just wanted to talk about this because I don't know when else to put it in. There's a really interesting scene where basically as the Ripper is like doing his thing, you see like all these other kind of horrifying world events being set in motion, and like, or maybe it's after Gull dies. You see like his spirit kind of visiting different sites of world history or like future horrible things that would happen. And one of the things that you see, he like watches, like his ghost watches as Hitler is conceived.
Okay.
But I mean, there are other things too, like maybe something with the Manson murders, or no, the Hindley Moore murders, like things like that, like big moments in British history and stuff. But just like, that's so strange. It's so strange and so interesting. Like the whole comic is much weirder than the movie would have you believe. Oh, and I'm sad. I forgot to mention a thing that I liked, but why don't you talk about your gripes and then I'll bring that up at the end.
The Nichols gang.
Yeah.
So the movie starts, the women are all terrorized by the Nichols gang, which is dumb. It's dumb. So there are a couple things that are dumb about it. So one of them is that historically speaking, you would have called them the Old Nickel Gang because there was a place called Nickel Street. But in this, they're the Nichols Gang, which is irritating because one of the cast members, or the characters, is like Mrs. Nichols. So, for clarity's sake, right, that's one of the main problems of this movie. There's so much lack of that. So that's dumb, but they're running what's called a protection racket, right? So, like, hey, we're going to protect you, and we're running a service, so, nice place you have here. Sure would be a shame if something happened to it, right? Pay us, and we will do that. So in this, the Nichols gang wants to just murder them wantonly. Like, oh yeah, we're just going to kill you. We demand that you pay us this exorbitant sum of money, and we're going to murder you. And really, I just seem to want to murder you. That's what I actually want, right?
Yeah. Like, we're going to ask you to provide us with an amount of money that you could literally never hope to give in like one day. And if you don't do it, you're dead. And then before that deadline even passes, they just start harassing and killing them. Right. Which is, that bothers me.
That's dumb. But that's not how a protection racket works. So you want to, I mean, it is a real thing, a protection racket, but you inspire fear. And so if you do this, I'm going to get you, right? So pay us money. But if you just start killing people, those are the people who are going to make money for you. You can't just kill them, then you get no money. Right? That's not how this enterprise is meant to function. Now, arguably, you might kill a person, which a person does die, and maybe someone in the Nichols gang is behind that. Maybe not. But a person dying is perhaps something that might inspire that fear. But it's so heightened because it doesn't seem to understand how the protection racket works. And Greg, it's fine that the women don't understand that, potentially. Like that's okay too. But the movie doesn't seem to understand it. And they're so aggressive and so heightened in how they perform it. I mean, they're hammier than the serial killer ever is. They're bloodthirstier more so than the serial killer ever seems to be. And he has a knife that's on a stupid sliding mechanism. So he can sort of jut his hand out quickly. If anyone's ever seen Taxi Driver, Robert De Niro makes a thing like that because he's a crazy person. And he makes it's like the slide you use for a drawer. He gets a couple of those and he puts a gun on him and he's able to stick his arms out because he wants to be cool and he's a disturbed, deranged figure. Whereas this guy has that basically somehow.
I was thinking of like the Assassin's Creed blade.
Yeah, but I mean, it looks like that, right? Which, well, that's fucking stupid, right? This is, It's stupid, but it comes at an early enough point in the movie that the very first few things we're getting, like you get a sense of a movie when you start it, right? So, okay, what is this movie? What world are we in? Okay, we're in this world. People are acting like this. This is not so real, or this is Shakespearean. It's heightened in that particular way, or it's not. It's heightened in a way that's campy or silly, or what is this? You get a sense of what the movie is from the start. And so one of the first things is you get this guy who has a knife on a retractable device that he's fastened. He's like, I'm going to kill you. Which misrepresents the tone of the movie. So it's a grounding element, but it's grounding us in a way that the movie isn't, to its detriment as well. So everything about that's just dumb.
Oh, yeah.
It's just dumb.
Oh, yeah. I completely agree. I also think, like, the movie really chickens out in some of its depiction of sex work, too. Like, Mary Kelly, because she's, like, she's the movie star. She's the youngest, the prettiest. You never really see her doing anything other than walking around.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Which, like,
good observation.
I mean, not that I want to see people in, these intense, like, sexual situations necessarily, but that's also, like, that's what this story is. That's what this is about. And granted, there's, like, more contemporary historical research that suggests a lot of the women who were killed were resorted to prostitution casually, like they weren't career prostitutes necessarily. There's a lot of debate, but as of the writing of this story, like this version of the narrative, I'm just like, why are you holding up this one character as being sort of more pure, like separate from the work that the others are shown as doing? It really puts a bad taste in my mouth, the way, like, the end of the movie hinges on, a woman dying a horrible death in Mary Kelly's place. Like, Mary Kelly, the last victim of the Ripper, was supposedly killed in the most brutal fashion. But it's supposed to be this moment of celebration when she's shown to have escaped. And she's living in Ireland, and she's like having a great time, I guess. But it's like, fuck, someone still had to die that way. Like, it feels like such an empty victory. That it's like, I feel disappointed in the movie for thinking that I could be happy about this ending. Does that make any sense? Like, it bums me out. It's so tragic, the things that happen to these people. And the movie, like, kind of pretends to care about them, but then reveals at the last second, like, with the way that it treats Mary Kelly, but actually she was the best one because she's Heather Graham,
Right.
So that's a big problem that I have, but I don't know. I don't know what you do. Again, I don't know what you do, because you want there to be some kernel of hope.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that because you told me of that particular criticism, so I was coming into it with that in mind. And I was less affected by that than you were, but I recognize its validity. To me, just cutting the romance is part of that.
Sure.
That's such a huge element of that.
Yeah, sure.
Because then you're not celebrating, like, oh, my love is still alive.
Yeah.
Like, no, just a different person died.
A different woman died in her place. It's just, I'm just like, ew, just ew. Was that all you wanted to talk about? Yeah.
I mean, I had one other little thing.
Yeah.
There are a few moments. So you have made allusion to they'll say I invented the 20th century. I don't think that belongs in this movie.
Sure.
I think the movie, like, I don't know what that means. Right?
I love it as a concept, but it's not explored here, in the way that it really needs to be. Like, it's not unpacked.
I mean, I can think of things that that could mean, right? But this movie doesn't give me anything on that.
No.
Like, I don't think that belongs in this movie. I don't think there's that comment there's a comment being made there. I think it's just a story about Jack the Ripper. I think that's all this movie should strive to be, given that it's not willing to fully adapt the source material. Furthermore, another example of that, so what's his name? Netley,
the carriage driver.
Yeah. So Netley meets with him because he's freaking out. Meets with Jack the Ripper. He's freaking out. He doesn't want to he's scared and he
Doesn't
thinks
wanna
that
do it.
he's gonna get caught, all this stuff. So Jack the Ripper says, we're in a radiant abyss where men meet themselves. And Netley says, I don't understand. Which is me. Like, yeah, I don't understand it because it doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he follows it up. It means we're in hell. What does that mean? You know,
Yeah.
what does any of this shit mean? Like, that's one of my pet peeves. I've alluded to this pet peeve in some of the movie that we've spoken about, but I don't like these big, like, poetic lines.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, ooh, what does that mean? Nothing. It doesn't mean anything.
And without revisiting the comic, I believe that's a line from one of the issues, but
the comic, I'm sure it does mean something.
Right. It's just not borne out here.
Right.
And, you know, I think with a textual medium, you're freer to play with elaborate or poetic or lyrical text. But I absolutely agree. In the movie, doesn't work.
Yeah. No, in the movie, if you're going to adapt something that's really big like that, pare it down. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. If you're going to make a movie of it, you're going to pare it down. So have the nerve to pare it down. That line doesn't belong here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, unless it's just being used as sort of evidence of, you know, the Ripper being insane or something. But we need to get more of that psychological underpinning before a line like that won't make you just stop in your tracks and be like, hold on, what? What are you saying?
Well, I mean, a lot of people, like stupid people, they're like, oh man, it's so cool and dark, you know.
Profound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That means shit to me. I'm mad now.
Oh, he's mad, ladies and gentlemen. He looks so upset. Do you hate the movie now?
Yeah, I hate it again. Okay. I'm back to that.
All right, that's fair. I forgot to mention something that I really love, so I'm just going to slip it in here at the end.
Okay.
And I mentioned this to you when we were discussing the movie initially. The scene of Ian Holm, Sergal, like where his eyes just periodically grow like blacker and blacker until like his whole sclera is absorbed in blackness, haunts me. Like, I think that's really effectively shot. Mm-hmm. And when you see him sort of from like the shot is almost like beneath his chin.
Slightly, yeah.
Angled up at his face.
Yeah.
And he just has this like horrifying expression. Like as he's riding through the night, like preparing to do his most gruesome final murder. Like, I think that's very well done.
Yeah. Good old Ian Holm.
He's so
sweet
good.
Little Bilbo Baggins.
I know.
Yeah.
Bilbo, lock him up. He's a menace to society. Oh my God. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Sure.
I would be remiss if I didn't, because that's a scene that I think of often just when I'm, you know, daydreaming.
All right. Well, is the workshop done?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm gonna go let Prince Albert out of that can, and then I'll be back with my revision.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, a kindly man has offered me some grapes, so I'm gonna go with him first, but I'm sure I'll be back with my revision.
In a lavish dining room in Buckingham Palace, the Queen Mother, Queen Victoria, welcomes her grandson, Prince Albert Victor, back from his recent travels. However, the prince is nervy and distracted, irritating the Queen. The prince attempts to leave the dinner as early as politeness will allow, but the Queen forbids it, demanding that he sit back down and continue the conversation. The prince grows increasingly erratic and agitated. He shows a tremor in one hand and an apparent sensitivity to light. When the Queen retires for the evening, she inquires with the royal family's physician, Sir William Gull, about the prince's strange behavior. Later, Sir Gull performs a medical examination on the prince. The prince confesses that he has frequent headaches and vision problems. He knows something is wrong with him, but not what. Gull reassures the prince, saying that it is likely just the effects of fatigue and overindulgence in foreign cuisine during his travels. After the prince leaves, however, Gull's smile fades. He pens a letter to an unknown recipient. So clearly my opening is a little bit different. based on, I mean, similar to a comment that I made earlier, I want this movie to be more of an ensemble piece. And so I wanted to start kind of at the top, so to speak.
Sure.
And just work our way back and forth to the different, upper, middle, and lower class. I also didn't see much of a point in hiding Sergal until like later in the movie. Just because I think it could still be a compelling mystery if, like the characters don't all know what's going on, even if we do. And that to me deals a little bit with the issue of like, how much does the movie play based on how much of this historical period are you familiar with, Anyway, we'll see if it works. Meanwhile, on a bleak gray evening in the slums of Whitechapel, we meet an ensemble of indigent prostitutes: Mary Kelly, Liz Stride, Dark Annie Chapman, Polly Nichols, Martha Tabram, and Kate Eddowes. The local Old Nickel Gang corners Mary in an alley, demanding a cut of her and her friends' meager earnings for protection. The leader of the gang threatens that if each woman does not pony up £1 apiece, an astronomical amount, by the end of the month, they will suffer. I promise I won't stop after every paragraph, but I changed the name of the Nichols Gang because that was annoying me too. And also I've changed the timeline because the movie would have you believe this all happens over the course of like 5 days. But really, the murders took place over about 2.5 months.
Yeah, right.
So I wanted to kind of slow things down a little bit, just so that there could, so things could feel like they were developing over time. Soon after, Prince Albert sneaks from the palace and makes his way into the slums of Whitechapel. A sinister-looking man tails the prince as he makes his way into a building on Cleveland Street. Shaking his head, the sinister man jots down a quick note and passes it to a courier before melting back into the shadows. So the next scene is more or less the same. The prostitutes spend the night in the two-penny hangover. They're woken up. We learn about Anne Crook and hear about her baby and her husband. Then, we follow the women throughout the course of a day as they move through Whitechapel, alternating who is taking care of baby Alice and who is taking turns soliciting customers. Interspersed in these scenes are moments of abuse at the hands of Johns and the patrolling police, fear as the women attempt to dodge the old nickel boys, rest, camaraderie, and exhaustion. We watch as the women make and spend their pennies, frittering much of their money away at the 10 Bells pub as they drink to alleviate their cares. The day passes into night, and they debate whether they should pay for a room or if the two-penny hangover will suffice for an infant. So I really wanted to follow the women more and see more of what just an ordinary day for them looked like, but also really display more of that sort of like historical determinism element that I talked about before, like watching them weaving back and forth between, lonely alleyways where they're sleeping with customers, going to the pub, going to, rest for an hour in a cafe or something, drinking their money away, taking care of the baby, crossing paths with one another, skirting the law. I wanted it to feel kind of like rats in a maze, basically, where, you're seeing the interconnectedness of like their lives with these places that will become so intimately familiar to us as we follow the case. I thought that would be nice to humanize them a little bit, to set the scene, and just to really score or underscore like how inescapable their poverty is. Let's see. The next little bit is kind of the same. So we meet Netley, the sinister man, Mr. Kidney, ambushes him and threatens him. Let's see. Mr. Kidney's goons drag out Prince Albert and Anne Crook. And they interrogate Anne. Martha Tabram is murdered. And then Polly Nichols. So that's it. A lot of the next pieces are the same. The next morning, aka after the Tabram and Nichols murders, at the Royal London Hospital, Sir Gull tells a group of touring doctors about a novel treatment for insanity. They observe Gull's younger colleague, Dr. Farrell, performing a lobotomy on Anne Crook in the operating theater. The kindly Dr. Gull marvels at the procedure's effectiveness at taking away the suffering of unfortunate patients. As Dr. Farrell gives a lecture on the procedure, the arrival of 2 members of Scotland Yard causes a stir. Inspector Aberline and Sergeant Godley have been tasked with investigating the murders of Martha Tabram and Polly Nichols. They attempt to ask Dr. Farrell questions about the case, but he waves the working-class policeman off in favor of speaking with his aristocratic peers. Sir Gull, however, welcomes Aberline, deeply intrigued by the case, though he introduces himself as a simple teacher, not the physician to the royal family. He asks how he can help the 2 investigators, and Aberline explains that Gull may be able to help them resolve a professional wager. Godley thinks that Tabram and Nichols are the work of the same killer, but Aberline suspects otherwise. Godley argues that both killings show a similar strand of brutality. The killer removed Martha Tabram's livelihood and disemboweled Polly Nichols, stealing at least one of her organs. However, upon looking over the case files, Gull explains the medical physics of the cuts, noting that Polly Nichols' killer would needed to know how to navigate human anatomy blindly in the dark. He declares Aberline the winner of the wager, impressed with the officer's sharpness. So I've moved the meeting between Gull and the Scotland Yarders earlier in the movie. And we still get the dismissal by Dr. Farrell. And so I just figured, like, again, if it's an ensemble piece, have their lines converge immediately. And also, you will notice we do not meet Aberline in an opium den now. That's gone. Visions are gone. Because I was like, absolutely not. No, thank you. Intrigued by Gull's speculations, Aberline consults his aristocratic supervisor, Sir Charles Warren, who scoffs at his theory, not knowing it is actually Gull's. Warren says that once Aberline finds the perpetrator, the sooner he can be promoted. Meanwhile, paranoia grows in Whitechapel. Returning home, Aberline sits down to rest and falls asleep. He has an erotic dream of wandering through Whitechapel and sleeping with a prostitute. His wife, Emma, startles him awake, and he apologizes for his jumpiness. Let's see. The next little bit is basically the same. Polly Nichols' funeral happens. Aberline questions the remaining prostitutes. They give him the runaround and chastise him for being useless. The killer eats the lavish meal, surrounded by portraits of people with medical deformities. And Annie Chapman's corpse is discovered, and Aberline puts the coins on her eyes. Let's see. That evening, Sir Charles Warren denies Aberline's request to consult Sir Gull once more about the killings. Warren is appalled that Aberline would trouble the Queen's own physician with such trivial matters, surprising Aberline, who did not realize his benefactor's identity. Aberline then, against orders, sneaks into a private function at London Hospital, where Joseph Merrick, the Elephant Man, is being shown as a medical marvel. In attendance is Anne Crook's beau, now confirmed to be Prince Albert. The tremor in his hand is increasingly apparent, and he has a minor outburst that briefly dampens the mood of the gathering, until the gregarious Gull draws attention away from the sullen prince. As the event is winding down, Sir Gull spots Aberline lingering in the doorway after having snuck inside, and he offers to speak with him again. They confirm that the killer is almost certainly a member of the educated class, and Gull explains that the weapon the killer used, a Liston knife, is a relatively common medical tool used for amputations. The next morning, Prince Albert wanders the streets of Whitechapel. Back at Buckingham Palace, the Queen Mother and Gull converse about the prince's condition. Gull paints an optimistic portrait of his patient's progress, claiming that Albert is well on his way to recovery. The Queen, in a moment of candor, wonders why today's young men in particular seem so prone to moral dissipation. She laments the loss of her own Prince Albert, a man of, quote, gallant manners and the gentlest and godliest of predilections. At Scotland Yard, Aberline notes that the killings in Whitechapel seem to form the shape of a 5-pointed star. Finally, in an unknown room, the killer convinces a faltering Netley to continue helping him until the last 2 killings are completed. All right. So the next bit is the same, where Aberline apprehends Mary Kelly, talks to her about the killings. She offers to testify, but he's like, no, that will only make the Nickel boys come down on you harder. They go to Aberline goes to the Special Branch's office, finds the files. Godley provides a distraction. He escapes. All right. Aberline takes Mary Kelly to the asylum where Anne Crook now resides. They see Anne in a wretched state, but she still speaks of her baby and her lover, whom she claims was a prince. Later, as Aberline and Mary Kelly discuss what they saw, Aberline reveals that his first wife, whom he married in youth, died of tuberculosis only 2 months after they were married. Mary expresses her sympathy, but he shakes his head, saying that his current wife, Emma, is a kind and godly woman who takes good care of him. He says that baby Alice has been dumped in an orphanage in Bishopsgate, but he promises Mary that he will find her and get her out of the city. Then they go to the art gallery. So this is actually based on the real Aberline, which you probably read.
I did read that.
Yeah. So I wanted there to be a little bit more truth to his biography. And I liked the idea of him having these sort of, maybe having conflicting feelings towards Mary and the other prostitutes, but still feeling the urge towards middle-class life and safety that I'll keep exploring later as well. Okay. So after they see the portraits and confirm, or now the characters know that it's definitely Prince Albert who was taking up with Anne Crook, Aberline forces his way inside of Sir William Gull's private residence. Gull is ill, but welcomes him anyway. He admits to Aberline that Prince Albert is in fact dying of syphilis. A shocked Aberline then theorizes that maybe Albert is the true killer due to psychosis induced by his ailment. But Gull then explains the prince knows nothing of human anatomy, and also the note that his hands are not steady enough to make the cuts. This is still where we're introduced to the Freemasons. They induct Dr. Farrell into the Masonic Order, and you see other heads of state in the background, just as in the original. Back at Scotland Yard, an officer brings Aberline a box that was just delivered, which contains half of a human kidney supposedly belonging to one of the victims, signed "From Hell." It sends Scotland Yard into a frenzy of activity, and a reluctant Aberline instructs Godley to arrest the old Nickel boys. Late that night, Aberline sits in his drawing room at home and sifts through a stack of posts from people claiming to be the Ripper. The letters are a blend of outrageous texts and drawings that merge violent fantasies with lurid sexual scenarios. As the fire dies down, the exhausted Aberline falls asleep in his chair. His dream of dallying with a prostitute returns, but this instance is different. Rather than engaging in a sexual encounter, he lingers over the selection of the perfect woman, stalking a red-headed woman who never shows her face to him. He follows her, growing closer and closer until he reaches out to snatch her by the throat. He wakes in a cold sweat. When his wife, Emma, tries to comfort him, he seems almost not to recognize her, shoving her away in terror. When he comes to his senses, he flees from the house and into the night, making his way almost by accident towards Whitechapel. Let's see. At the 10 Bells, Kate and Mary meet up with Liz Stride, who has a pretty Brazilian girl, Ada, in tow. Liz and Ada kiss until Kate tells them to be more cautious in public. Mary goes off to speak with Aberline, who shows up looking like a ghost outside of the window of the 10 Bells. Fearing Mary Kelly is next, he gives her and her friends the money to hole up in a private room for several days until the killer can be caught. A grateful Mary goes to kiss Aberline, but he pulls away with sudden disgust. When she laments that she was acting from her own desires and that she is still a woman, he panics, rejecting her coldly, until a constable discovers them, awkwardly recognizing that he has interrupted Aberline in the middle of a compromising moment. Repentant for his unkindness to Mary Kelly, Aberline begs her to take the money and wait until he sends word that everything is safe. She takes the money, but they both know that their fragile fellowship has taken a serious toll. So again, I wanted the collisions between members of different social classes to be more painful, and like to emphasize the sort of impossibility of connecting across these lines without a sort of permanent shift in position of one of the parties involved. Aberline cannot do it. He wants to help, but he feels revulsion, at the world that he's really trying to reject.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big part of the tragedy of this story, just like the dehumanization of the victims.
Mm.
So I really wanted to linger with that in a more meaningful way. Mary hides out with the others in the lodging house. Everything is going okay until Liz Stride gets in the fight with Ada, goes out for the drink. Let's see. Aberline makes the discoveries about Mr. Kidney being a surgeon's assistant and also realizing that Anne Crook's baby is potentially a contender for the throne of England. So he's starting to piece together the mystery, again, in the same way as in the original. The Ripper corners Liz Stride as she wanders in search of a drink, offering her absinthe and grapes. In a secluded courtyard, he attacks Liz, as Netley assists, but a passing Jewish pedestrian interrupts the slaying. And just a note on this, I like the idea that Netley is drawn deeper and deeper into the killings because he's also kind of part of this ambiguous middle class. Like, he services the aristocracy, he's a working man, but he's paid more than, say, like an indigent prostitute.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, he is complicit in the murders in a similar, or well, not the same, but a similar way that like Aberline is as well. Okay. Meanwhile, Kate Eddowes searches for Liz at the 10 Bells, then on the streets. The Ripper kills Liz in the famed double event, but before he can mutilate the body, a passing horse and cart interrupts. The police get on the scene of the crime almost immediately, but Aberline predicts that the killer, unsatisfied, will be on the hunt for another victim in short order. Denied his ritual, the killer stalks down Kate Eddowes. Aberline calls for heavier patrols in Whitechapel's more rundown streets, but before he can apprehend the killer, the special branch snatch him, threaten him, and knock him unconscious. As the Ripper finishes his work on Kate, he leaves an inscription on the wall in chalk, reading, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." Aberline, when he wakes, sees Sir Charles Warren on the scene. Instead of helping, Warren demands that the chalk inscription be washed away. When Aberline protests, Warren strips him of his badge and suspends him, shutting him out of the case. Stripped of his authority, Aberline leaves a letter for Mary Kelly at the 10 Bells. Time passes. Autumn rolls on towards winter. The temperature plummets, and a pause in the killings lulls London into a delicate sense of security, punctuated still by sporadic episodes of violence in the slums. Whitechapel is still Whitechapel. Not yet reinstated, Aberline frets over the completion of the Ripper's pentagram. Remembering that the assailant who attacked him was wearing a ring like Sir Charles Warren's, Aberline researches the Masons, realizing that their sacred symbols resemble signs left by the Ripper. Meanwhile, Ada and Mary remain holed up in their rented room, but their money begins to dry up, especially as the temperature drops and they require more money for kindling, forcing them to take turns leaving and searching for John's. So again, wanted to make clear that this was happening over a longer period of time. I don't love my solution for how Aberline starts to piece everything together, but I think it's better than like a vision telling him. You know, like I'm imagining like, oh, his face was cut when someone with a ring punched his lights out, and he remembers that and remembers the ring or something like that. I don't know. You could make it more robust too if it's clear like a month is passing, you know. Anyway. Gradually, Aberline puts the pieces of the puzzle together. The Masonic symbols, the grape stems, the gaps in the killings, and the secret records of the Cleveland Street affair all point to one person. Aberline makes his way to Sir Gull's home once more. And, you know, I wanted to make it clear, like, the pause in the killings correlate to, like, when Sir William is ill. And that's why there were periods of inactivity when he wasn't well, all that stuff. Let's see. The next stuff is the same. Either Mary or Ada leaves on a mysterious errand. You can't tell who, though, I mean, it's kind of obvious given the language of film. Aberline confronts Gull. Mr. Kidney knocks him unconscious as Gull prepares to complete the final killing. Let's see. Aberline escapes from his captors as Gull makes his way towards Miller's Court, the final lodging of Mary Kelly. Aberline escapes from the wreckage and flees into the night. We see Gull killing the sleeping woman as Aberline tries to stop him. Blah, blah, blah. All that. That's the stuff that I actually liked. Aberline discovers that he has failed. When Aberline returns to the scene, he and a police coroner study the corpse. He touches a blood-soaked strand of hair. It is auburn, not the bright red of Mary Kelly's hair. Later, Aberline rushes to the 10 Bells, but there is nothing waiting for him there. He spots, out of the corner of his eye, a Freemason enforcer tailing him. So here there's no letter waiting for him from Mary Kelly. We go back to Buckingham Palace. Queen Victoria expresses her distaste in Gull's methods, though says ultimately he was loyal to the crown, and she decides that she doesn't want to hear anything more about it. We see the same judgment for Gull's crimes, where he is lobotomized by Dr. Farrell. And all that really changes after this is the ending. Weeks later, Aberline visits the Bishopsgate orphanage where baby Alice was dropped off, hoping to find her there. However, there is no child matching her description. The film ends with Aberline back in his home, praying. He asks God for forgiveness in failing to protect the Whitechapel victims, as well as for his ill treatment of Mary Kelly in particular. He then says a prayer on her behalf, hoping against hope that she and baby Alice have escaped from the filthy, dragging belly of the serpent and made her way safely to Ireland. Or their way, rather. Emma comes upon him as he concludes his prayers. When she asks him what's wrong, he begins to weep, collapsing into her lap and hiding his face like a child. She takes his hands in hers, murmuring, "Good night, ladies." So I wanted it to truly be left up to audience interpretation whether Mary Kelly escaped and whether it was indeed Ada who was killed, because I couldn't bring myself to like celebrate her survival. I also didn't want it to be clear whether baby Alice made it out alive or was just another victim who was sort of absorbed into the underbelly of London. And I also wanted to end the movie with a woman, but the line that I use, "Good night, ladies," that's how Alan Moore finishes his dedication of the comic, which I find very tender and very touching. Like the line that he uses, you know, he dedicates it to all the victims by name, and he says something to the effect of like, "You and your demise, these are the only things of which we are certain. Good night, ladies." And I just love that. I love that line. And I think it's appropriately somber and melancholy. And I wanted to end things on less of a celebratory note and more of like a farewell. So yeah, that's my revision.
Well, I have some thoughts about that.
Tell me.
I think that My thoughts about Eurovision are going to be best revealed by hearing my revision.
Ooh,
because I think that you're going to hear some things that are going to be interesting.
Interesting.
So normally I'd like to comment on Eurovision, but
shall we save it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Of course.
Okay. So my revision begins. So there's going to be a lot of just paring down through my revision, actually. So there's going to be a lot of referencing to things that are just no longer there. That's going to be a big theme in mine. So in this case, we are cutting the introduction with Aberline smoking opium. So we do not begin there. Instead, we begin much as we do in the movie, just with the women. So that's our starting point. So as we get introduced to their lives, that's where the movie starts. Because they are the objects of our sympathy, right? They're the victims here. So I want to start with them. I am de-emphasizing Aberline a good bit here throughout this revision. So that's going to be something of a continuing theme. So we carry on with them up to the point where we meet baby Alice. There's the promise that Albert, or whatever name that she believes him to have, I guess, will give them the
Albert
money.
in the movie.
Yeah, that sounds right. Anyway, so I am then cutting a scene. We pivot to a carriage driver, Netley, sitting outside of a building on Cleveland Street. So I'm cutting that for a couple of reasons. I'm cutting that so Kidney holds a knife to Netley. Right. So I don't like that, because when we first watched the movie, I was spending a lot of that time thinking that the enforcer of the Nichols gang was the same guy as Kidney. Partially evidenced by the fact, I mean, when we meet the enforcer, it's dark and it's in shadow, and everybody's wearing a hat. Everybody's wearing the same hat, right? So like I'm thinking I'm thinking these characters are the same, so it was confusing for me. And it's confused because these people are first introduced by putting their knife to someone's throat. So we have one right after the other instances of the same behavior. So I'm cutting that from Kidney. I don't need that element. Furthermore, I'm cutting Netley, because here Netley is the carriage driver for Prince Albert. In this one instance, the only time we see him the rest of the movie, he's carriage driver to Gull or Jack the Ripper. So I spend the movie thinking that he works for Gull. But I guess he just works for the whole royal family, or he's just a carriage driver for hire. So let's not complicate his role. I want to make the movie easier to follow. So I don't need him working for one person one time and for working for one person all of the rest of the time. So we don't need that introduction at all. I also don't like it as a plot element, because if his escape, if we need to return him to the castle, to Buckingham Palace, then the carriage driver should be somebody who's trusted and in the employ of the special police. You don't just threaten a man and say, do this or I'll kill you. Like, you can't have weak links in your chain if you're in your special operation, right? So it doesn't make sense to me. So I'm cutting that all together. So the way it plays out here is we have the promise that Albert will pay to the money to protect from the thugs, straight to and Albert in flagrante delicto. So we're just cutting straight to that. Otherwise, that plays out the same. So Martha Tabram looks for clients. She is killed. We have all of that. That all happens in the same way. We then, normally in the movie, would cut to Aberline in the opium den. That's cut. Right? So Aberline is not an opium addict in my revision of the movie, which is something that we share. So instead, we're introduced to Aberline and Godley in the morgue. That's our first introduction to these characters. So it's playing out basically like any procedural would. That's where we first meet them. Aberline, as played by Hugo Weaving.
Ooh.
So I'm not naive. I recognize that Hugo Weaving would not have lured in audiences in 2001. So I do recognize that. But I'm not bound by commercial restraints. I don't care about that. So I am importing Hugo Weaving from the Wolfman. It's the same character.
Love it.
Why not? I like him just fine in that role. Hugo Weaving's a good actor. Why not? But he is that gruffness. He has command, right? He has that assertiveness. I buy him in uncomfortable situations. I buy him moving between worlds. So let's go with that. He's Hugo Weaving now. He's no longer Johnny Depp.
Well, and this is only two years after The Matrix, so maybe he would have a certain...
People know who he is.
Lord
Elrond. Elrond is at the same time, right?
This is his moment.
He's recognizable, but he's not a box office draw, is all I'm saying. But otherwise, that scene proceeds the same, excluding the context of I expected to see a different corpse here from the vision. That's gone, so we don't have that expectation. So the next scene that follows. At the Royal London Hospital, Sir William Gull tells a group of touring doctors about a novel treatment for insanity. They meet Dr. Farrell, who is apparently gifted but curt, and he tells the touring doctors that he will be performing a lobotomy on Anne Crook in the operating theater. The kindly Dr. Gull marvels at the procedure's effectiveness at taking away the suffering of unfortunate patients. Now, this is slightly different, though it's not probably readily apparent. So when I was rewatching this, at this point, Dr. Gull, Jack the Ripper, has killed somebody, perhaps not. So that's a little bit unclear, but I wanted there to be a little bit of tension between Farrell and Gull, because we do see that later throughout the movie. Farrell is not yet a Freemason, but he is preparing to join, so I think you can reasonably assume he has access to some information. Perhaps not the whole portrait of what is going to happen, but he is somewhat in the loop. Right, I'm willing to accept that. So when Gull is asking who is being lobotomized, Gull already knows that, right? So I wanted that to change slightly, because the way it's proceeded, or the way it's represented in the movie presently, he's explaining it to Gull as if Gull does not already know. So I did want that to be addressed to the group of students. I wanted maybe perhaps a knowing look or a slight pause, just a little beat, just a very slight thing, little touch of performance, which you can do if you have really outstanding actors, where you can see it in retrospect, right? That he's asking a question he already knows the answer to. So I wanted him to address the students or the touring doctors rather than Dr. Gull himself. So, slight thing. Anyway, we proceed. We have Polly being confronted by McQueen, the enforcer of the Nichols gang, who are, of course, being changed to the old Nickel gang. So we affected the same solution to that problem. A very obvious one, in fact, but the same one nonetheless. That plays out the same, except there's no stupid knife slider thing. That's dumb. That's very dumb. We proceed along much the same for a time. We do move on to the next scene in the morgue, where Polly is being investigated. Her body is being investigated. And Aberline refers to the method of killing being rational and methodical, contrasts it with Tabram's killing. And I'm changing one thing here, which is that there's a line about, this is a different breed of killer. It's too tagline-y.
Sure.
Right. It's much too much. It feels like it recognizes the historical context. Like
right.
that here, like this, it's like saying, World War II has begun, at the first moment, right? It's too much.
Like they will look back on this moment and say, this was the first killing of its kind.
Right. Yeah, too much. So just taking that back. Little things like that make your movie dumber. We needn't have that. So it proceeds on, realizing the killer may be someone with surgical knowledge. Aberline consults his aristocratic supervisor, scoffs at his theory, so on and so forth. We have another opium scene that follows that, which is cut, of course. So we are removing that. We move along. Polly Nichols' funeral. We have another murder, this time of Annie Chapman. I'm changing one element of that, which is Aberline placing the two coins on her eyes. So that moment of tenderness. My version of Aberline just doesn't really have that, doesn't possess that quality. I mean, he's a crasser, tougher guy. He's not sensitive in that way. So I'm removing that little moment in that scene. Otherwise, it plays out basically the same. Here we have the meeting with Gull and Aberline. That is much the same, but I am removing also the fact that he intuits that Aberline is addicted to opium. I'm repeating that a lot, but that is that's seated in a lot of different places, so we have to cut that element there. We don't need it for Gull to seem kindly. It's not necessary in terms of advancing our understanding of that character either, so nothing really is lost. There's also a brief scene that doesn't really seem to have anything to do with anything else. So immediately following that, Prince Albert wanders the street of Whitechapel, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, we understand that he has had dalliances with prostitutes, but he doesn't here. And in fact, he's propositioned by a prostitute, and he seems like he's somewhat like, I don't know about that, and then gets in his carriage and takes off.
The only thing that I can think that that's doing or trying to do is suggest that maybe he's the killer.
Yeah,
but
it's so brief and so inconsequential that it's I don't think that's useful. So I did want to go ahead and trim that scene too. I mean, that shortens the movie by all of 10 seconds, but that's the point too. Also, it's so insubstantial; it's not adding anything. The scene with Netley and Jack the Ripper, who is of course in shadow and unseen, and I think perhaps performed by a different voice actor, that is there. But we're taking out the "No, we are in hell" thing. As I've said, these pretensions, these false dialogues of this profundity, this false profundity, very off-putting to me. So far there's a lot of paring down that I've done. I haven't changed very much. So there will be some changes, of course, but we proceed. Aberline apprehends Mary Kelly to talk to her about the killings. Mary offers to testify against the old Nickel boys, but Aberline explains that this will only keep them off the women's backs for a little while. Furthermore, it explains that it doesn't make sense for them to have done it, or at least all of them, the killings that is, as the scheme they're running works on frightening the group and keeping them indebted, and that they can't make any money if they simply kill everyone who is going to make it for them. So here we're using the ridiculousness of the protection racket as being the point. He recognizes they can't be Jack the Ripper. It doesn't make sense from a business perspective. So they might be concerned that the Nickel boys are killing us. No, it's really not them. This protection racket that they're threatening you with, it only works on making you frightened. So this scary man scared you into thinking that something was going to happen that never would, or at least not to all of you. So perhaps McQueen killed the first victim, Tabram, but otherwise the rest of them, that's not a good explanation.
It's not a good business model.
Yeah, and it also shows that the inspector is smart. He understands how crime works, which we haven't seen that much of we haven't seen that much of that so far. So it demonstrates his understanding of the world in which he lives and works. So we proceed on. Let's see. This Hannah rushes stage, still speaks for baby. Aberline promises Mary that it will help and find Anne's baby. We're cutting the sympathetic backstory to him. So his own wife having died in childbirth, that's gone. We just don't need that moment there, for me anyway. So I'm just taking that out. Aberline tells Mary about the special branch. That's all playing out the same way. The only thing that I'm changing is the remark about an austere portrait of Queen Victoria, because she looks, again, she probably doesn't have a great sense of what Queen Victoria looks like. Then sees her like, oh, she's walking over my grave, aka, hey, moviegoers, I'm telling you that this person is masterminding my death, right? It's too much, so cut that. There's a few instances of some cheeky dialogue there. Let's just go ahead and get rid of that. That's dumb. So I'm taking that out. Furthermore, we proceed on the meeting inside of Gull's residence, much the same. the Freemasons, the induction there. That's the same, except we do actually put the word Freemason in there somewhere. That's all we need to do. I actually will tell you directly rather than the listening audience that when I was first talking about this movie, I was considering cutting the Freemason element altogether. I decided not to, and I'll tell you why when we get to that, where the point in the movie where I think it becomes really relevant here. So I did keep the Freemason element in case you're expecting me to have cut that. So, we move along. So, Mary goes to kiss Aberline, but he pulls away. She laments that she was acting from her own desires and that she is still a woman. I'm cutting that he kisses her fiercely. So I'm cutting that romance completely. And they're interrupted by the constable. So, what I'm now saying to you in response to, like, what do I say to your revision, I think at this point it probably should be clear that we're doing a lot of the same.
Yeah,
we're doing a lot of the same things here.
Yeah. Just with slightly different flavors.
Yeah. So opium gone, romance gone, psychic powers gone, Johnny Depp gone. That's maybe a little different, but
no. Well, I certainly would recast him. I just didn't have a specific person in mind, but honestly.
Why
Hugo,
not?
You're welcome in
Why
my version
not?
too.
So Mary and the others are hiding out. Liz and Ada dance until a squabble. Kidney was the surgeon's assistant in the military. The recognition that Anne Crook's baby is the heir to the throne of England. We're keeping all of that. We move along. Denied his ritual, the killer stalks down Catherine Eddowes. Aberline does not have a vision of that killing. We proceed. Warren demands that the chalk inscription be washed away. When Aberline protests, Warren strips him of his badge and suspends him, locking him out of the police force. Seated on the stairs and feeling defeated, he notices a ring on Sir Warren's hand, which bears the emblem of the Freemasons. So the Freemason ring, again, was our solution to that. So, he does not come to recognize the association of the Freemasons from a vision.
Thank God.
Thank God. So that's a simple enough solution. And it's one that the movie gives you because later on he's shown to have that symbol. Like it falls off of his hand in a struggle. So the movie already gives you that.
Aberline pulls the ring off and throws it to the ground.
Right,
which is like a weird thing to do.
Stripped of his authority, Aberline leaves a letter for Mary Kelly at the 10 bell. So here would have been where the vision took place. So just to be clear, I believe that's cut. Mary retrieves the that's right. So Aberline makes his way to Gull's home and once more. So he has done the research. He's recognized the symbol, does the research on the Masonic symbols, confronts Gull. So the only thing I'm actually changing about this scene is I'm cutting the line about it gave birth to the 20th century.
Sure.
I don't think it belongs in this movie. I also don't like that it is mostly there so that Aberline can say, "You're not going to see the 20th century, motherfucker," and then shoots him, right? Like that line doesn't work here for a lot of reasons, but
it's also super annoying that they show it as like an epigraph to the movie and then have Gull say it.
Say it also.
Like, stop.
Yeah.
Stop it.
I'm removing that, but the reason now I will say why I'm keeping the Masonic stuff. Something that kills me, good grief. Something that I don't like about serial killer stuff a lot of the time. So you'll see that somebody killed somebody in this particular, very specific, rich with symbolism way. Mm-hmm. The thing about that always bothers me, or it can bother me. A lot of the time it bothers me because most people don't think in symbols. Most people don't think in metaphor. Human brains don't generally work that way. Now, in literature, you do that, and or perhaps in art, you might do that. And that's if you're pretty advanced in it. If you're a really high-level creator, you might think about symbolism. You might think about metaphor. Like these people, you enrich your work in that way. People don't generally do that. Serial killers are skew dumb, frankly. Like that's what serial killers are actually like. They're not generally working in that mode. They just kill, right? So they're not saying, I'm going to kill somebody and I'm going to do this and I'm going to, in so doing, give my remark about about femininity or the state of the working class or whatever. That's not
Jonathan Swift's novels in my killing.
Yeah, it's just not how people work, right? Not usually. Now, there are cases where that happens. I'm not denying that possibility, but I don't. That needs to be justified, right? And so this is kind of the first serial killer. This is the serial killer who's creating the mold and creating our, at least fictionalized idea of what a serial killer is like. And so he is specifically invoking symbols here. So if you take away the Freemason thing, you lose all of that. So I do think it enhances this movie upon further reflection. So he's working with a set of symbols specifically. And of course, he's also narcissistic. So I forget the line exactly. It's like the history has a skin and London's streets are its veins. The pentacle, the cross, these things, they have someone like you can recognize the power in these symbols, and I am that power. So there's the narcissism of a serial killer. He's centering himself in the whole affair, right? But the Masonic symbols, I do think here actually matter to cut. Initially, I was thinking, do we need the Freemasons here? Because is it not enough to have the monarchy behind it? They're just a bunch of goons working for the crown. Good enough. The Freemason organization is another layer. Like, is this adding something? But I think yes. Ultimately, I do think yes. So I'm really wrestled with that, but I landed on keeping it. So anyway, everything proceeds pretty much the same from here up to the point where dawn breaks. Aberline rushes toward the blood-soaked room at Miller's court. What's different is that Godley does not tell him to, like, don't look. We don't need that, because Godley is not confronting him about a romantic obsession that he believes him to have. So he does attack Sir Charles Warren. That plays out in a similar way. He does notice that the blood-soaked strand of hair is of a different color. So I'm keeping that element. Though yours was, you changed it, but to a more ambiguous color.
Yeah, I made it auburn instead of brown, so it wasn't clear.
However, Aberline does not rush to the 10 bells. There is no letter. So I'm cutting that also. So so it seems as if you and I have written something very close to the same revision.
Listener, I promise we didn't consult one another on our revisions.
So here is where we finally make a proper change, because almost everything I've done has been a cut. Almost everything. I'm paring it down, trying to make it shorter. This is a 2-hour movie, so I'm trying to make it simpler. I'm trying to make it easier to follow. Lots of clarity edits.
You always go for that tight 90.
Well, I probably haven't made it very much shorter, but I do want it to be clearer and simpler. I don't want the story to... This story does not have the literary aspirations. Like, we're shedding that. Like, this is not... It just can't achieve it. Which, that's okay. It can still be a compelling story about Jack the Ripper killing people. Like, that's enough. That's a movie, right? It doesn't have to have that. And where it does have that, it's to its detriment in the original movie, I think. So let's just shed all of that. Let's just have a compelling story about Jack the Ripper killing people. So, everything with... Once Skull is revealed, almost all of that is really amazing. But... we have, as the judge brings down the gavel, we see the 3 taps of Dr. Farrell lobotomizing Sir Gull. Aberline watches the procedure from afar. This is where the only real change I've made to the story. Gull has a final vision. Oh, and really, I didn't make it. So I'll explain why once we actually tell it. Gull has a final vision of a red-headed woman somewhere in Ireland with a baby, and she rebukes him as she somehow can detect him, telling him to go back to hell. Mm-hmm. The vision ends, and Gull, like Anne Crook before him, is rendered a catatonic shell, locked away in an anonymous asylum under a fake name. That's the ending for me. Mm-hmm. So we're cutting everything to do with Godly telling go after her because Aberline is not in love with her. That's gone. We're cutting Aberline's death from opium because he's not an opium addict. Mm-hmm. So that's gone. We end with that. We end with Jack the Ripper being catatonic from having been lobotomized. But I want there to be so we can do a little bit of vision seeing here because we have had established that with Gull, right? We have the fantasies of him boiling the heart in the kettle and him in the surgical theater and the applause of his peers, right? So he's not necessarily psychic, though maybe he is. I suppose you could play that with some ambiguity. He's in this
sort of esoteric world.
Right. So he sees things in a way that is creative and interesting and strange, right? He has these visions of a crazed person, right? Well, I want him to experience at the end that he's lost, right? Mm-hmm. He's killed somebody, and that's tragic and horrible, right? So we're not here celebrating that she's gotten away. Like we don't have Aberline being thrilled. Oh, my love is free. Right. My love is free. We don't have that because he doesn't care about her in that way. Mm-hmm. So we still have a murdered woman, much as we've had the other murdered women. But what we also have is that Jack the Ripper has failed to complete his pentacle. Mm-hmm. His endeavor, so he was trying to take revenge, as we see it explained in the movie, revenge against the traitors who have undone his life work. Right? Mm-hmm. That's what he wants. He has wrought his mighty works upon this world, and none of you are equipped to judge me. So I want, for his last thing, his brain, as it's sort of dying, as the taps are coming in, is for him to realize that he has lost, that he has failed to complete his masterwork.
And I love the idea of Mary Kelly specifically getting the last word and offering a final rebuke, to his sort of self-mythologizing.
Right. So when I say that I didn't come up with that, that's how From Hell, the graphic novel ends. Mm-hmm. So he sees a vision as he is dying, as he floats through all of all these major events in history. He lands at her where she is, where she has survived. She's gotten away from him, and she recognizes him. She sees him. She can detect him, and she says, "Go back to hell." So there is that victory moment for her too. I liked that.
Yeah.
So that is not my invention, so I'm not taking credit for it. But and I think that I want the movie, generally speaking, to move away from quite a lot of what Alan Moore does. But I do think the movie needs that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think if you're going to do something that's a little more, there's a kind of sternness to your edit, I think. I like that we end on a moment of, like, rejection. No, you go back to hell. You take your fantasies of giving birth to the 20th century with you, you're just a man, and I'm a woman, and I'm alive.
Right.
I like that a lot.
But yeah, so how do I feel about your revision? Well, I think it should be clear. I did almost exactly the same thing as you.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite a lot of similar.
I think we have our usual sort of differences in, like, the predisposition or, like, the tone of the movie. Like, I want it sadder, as I always do. And I think the thing I wanted to emphasize most, or, like, how dreadfully painful it is for all the people involved to, like, just fail one another constantly, because they can't serve one another in a meaningful way as they're trying to protect their own class aspirations. And it's just sad, you know? Like it's lurid and it's sensational, but it's sad. But yours feels more like hard-boiled in a way that I really enjoy as well. But it is so funny that we were like identifying the same thing. So we were like, nope, out with this, out with that.
That's gotta go. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the one where that was also really true? The one that we did where it was like, oh, we did the exact same things. Was it Ghost Story?
Maybe. I don't remember.
What did we do? Anyway, yeah, but this was an interesting one to work on.
Indeed.
I'm glad that you found a little bit more room in your heart for this movie.
Yeah.
Upon like a close rewatch. Because I agree. Like it's easy to write off, I think, but yeah, it's still interesting.
Okay. We all done here?
We're done.
Okay. Well, folks, which revision would you most like to see on screen? What movie would you like to see us cover next? Let us know at thedevilsworkshoppod@gmail.com.